The Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BRUTALLY and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Kris Dawson, guitarist of Bury Tomorrow. And I did this chat a few hours ago today as I'm recording this in anticipation of putting out this episode in a few days. And as you'll kind of end up hearing me say at one point in the chat, the band in the presser bio leading up to the release of the album coming up in 10 days as of when I'm recording this on the 31st of this month, it talked about a lot of the struggles the band had gone through and a lot of the issues that they had all gone through and that possibly they were thinking about the end of the band. And it's one of those things where it really kind of resonated with me. And recently I feel like we have, now that we're kind of getting out of the pandemic, there were a lot of bands and I think a lot of people who kind of took stock in where they were in their lives and what means what to them, what's important and what's not. And I gotta say, it was one of those things where reading that and hearing the record, it kind of really hit me when it needed to. It's funny how music can do that for you at times. And it was a thing where I took a new job and I really have been challenging myself personally to do something that I've always wanted to do, which is step into a more of a managerial role beyond the roles that I've had previously and kind of be more of the it person, the de facto leader, I guess, for lack of a better term. And it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle to try to balance a personal life, to try to balance a work life, to try to learn something new while also being the one that everyone comes to when they have questions and finding answers and doing all those things. And at, almost 40, it's a bit of a challenge. And at times I feel like things have had to change. Priorities have shifted. And it's a thing where a lot of times I felt overwhelmed trying to, on my few days off where I'm not currently working on schedules or checking in on my store or going in and working on something that I just don't have time to deal with when I'm working. It's been a grind, and I kept telling myself that at some point it'll be worth it because all of these things that I'm doing to get the store back on track, to get it where it needs to be, it'll just be an issue of maintaining from there. And from there I can kind of coordinate my life accordingly. And I think about over a month in at this point, I'm almost there. But if I'm being transparent, it's one of those things where the podcast has suffered. I haven't had time. I haven't had the availability to have anyone on. And it just, the few times that I was doing stuff, it didn't feel like something I wanted to put my time into. I didn't want to sit in my office and work on podcasts. I didn't really want to do the thing. The weird part about it is I actually missed talking to people. I missed having these conversations with people. And it was a thing where I already have what will be episode 400 recorded. And I honestly have been thinking about changing the show in some capacity. Do I make it a seasonal thing where maybe it's 8 to 10 conversations I have and that's just a season and I drop them? Do I go to a every other week kind of schedule? Do I do something like Someone Who Isn't Me podcast with Daniel Carter and just drop them when I feel like they're of the quality? And that's something I've really been focusing on is the idea of quality over quantity. I was reading an article real quickly today about a TikTok person that lives here locally that's pretty successful and big and well known. And he was talking about how he takes more time to make quality content, and he thinks that that's why it resonates with people versus creating quantity content. And it's one of those that throughout listening to this record and in anticipation of this chat this week, I really have just been thinking about the podcast and where does it fit into my life now? And when kind of listening to the band's new record, there seems to be, from my perspective, this renewed sense of like banding together and wanting to do something and getting kind of finding that original enjoyment, the original purpose of why you do this thing. And today was one of those days where, you know, between the conversation that you're about to hear with Kris, and then I ended up doing one about 30 minutes later with Jake from Gideon, these were kind of the catalyst today to remind me why I enjoy doing this podcast, why when I don't do it, I feel out of sorts, why I make the time to do it. Because there's at least between me and the person who I'm usually sitting across from talking, there's a connection. There's shared ideas. We explore ideas. And typically, in the few minutes after we're done talking, you know, there's really a conversation about how nice this was, about how nice it was to not just focus on, well, tell me about this song or whatever, that there's more of a humanity to it. And both people ended up kind of thanking me for taking the time to listen to their music, taking the time to have a real conversation with them about real things. And it's something where I don't take that lightly. It's something where I walk away like I always do, and I think about the conversations I have with these people and the sporadic times that I hear from people, either in an email, Facebook comments, YouTube comments, whatever, or even texts from friends. It's one of those things where a lot of times people will tell me what a specific episode or a part of an episode means to them. And then I kind of realize why this is important and why I keep doing it. It starts with me, but it's also in the hope that eventually someone will hear it and maybe it'll do something for them, or it'll make them feel more connected and closer to a band or a person in a band that they really love. I guess at the end of the day, it's all about finding what drives you. It's solving the question for why. Why do we do this? And today was kind of a reminder of why. I found my why. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Kris Dawson, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it.
There we go. That should be okay.
It's funny to me because, like, when talking to people, like, there was a spell, like, back in probably around like the iPhone 3, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, whenever the first Note phone came out, and it was a thing where I knew that I was watching a lot of like videos online, like from my phone, and became more of a thing for me where I just wanted a bigger screen to watch stuff when I was like at work or whatever. And so I switched from my iPhone, which is something I'd had for a while, and before that is Blackberries, and became this thing where when I knew I couldn't have a non-iPhone, when I kept trying to find ways to download apps and things and skins to make my non-iPhone look like and operate like an iPhone, and because I have basically all Apple stuff, I was like, it just works better for my life. It's pretty idiot-proof out of the box. Like, yeah, if you want to fuck around and like
make that your customized thing, then Androids and all those are perfectly fine. But for me, and a lot of what I do, I'm not super tech savvy either, and I'd rather just like plug and go.
Mate, I'm such a sucker for a good advert. Like in the UK at the moment, they've got just like really great like advertising campaign for these new Google phones. And I was just like, I'm overusing Wi-Fi to look at old pictures of my dog. Do you know what I mean? Like I just wanted to look at some old pictures to bring back some good memories. I'm like, shit, I need data or Wi-Fi. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to move to Google. And then I had such a hard time, like, because I was locked out my Apple ID. I had to like reset everything, go into the Apple store, get someone from America to call me at like stupid o'clock in the morning. And it was just 3 weeks of arduous, like I could have avoided it. But I only use a phone literally. I hate having social media. If I wasn't in a band, I wouldn't have any of it. If I wasn't a barber, I wouldn't have any of it. So yeah, I just look forward to the day where my job doesn't actually rely on having a phone, because I'd just have a Nokia again. Give me some Snake and I'm good.
You need a T89 calculator that it sounds like get all the games you want at Drug Dealer, if you remember that one.
I don't know if I can. But the positive to this I'm noticing is you get this like Game Boy emulator, so at least on tour I can play Pokemon, so that'll be a laugh.
I mean, out of curiosity, how old are you?
30, reluctantly.
Okay, well, as an almost 39-year-old, I'm very much in the same boat where I, like, if I didn't have this, most of my social media would be gone. Like, as it is on my personal pages, I barely post. Someone was commenting about something on Facebook the other day, and I was like, I haven't checked Facebook in, like, 5 or 6 days. Like, it's off my phone. I don't have it, like... So only when, and the only reason I really even keep Facebook around very similarly is for the memories of posting stuff. So like today when I hopped on looking for photos to use for like the podcast graphics, I saw today is the 1 year anniversary of my wife and I buying this house. So
nice.
It was like one of those where I'm like, oh, I like that, but by and large the rest of it's shit. So I don't I don't want to participate.
I've not had Facebook since 2015, and my life significantly improved from not having it. Twitter, I've been on that for like 2 years. So yeah, I'm just a boring old dude. Like I pretty much just use my phone for like MMA podcasts, and that's pretty much it. So, and obviously speaking to you today, so that is a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been one of the things to me, and I guess kind of segueing into, I guess, one of my first questions as I was kind of thinking about it. You know, I went back through and kind of read the I forget what you actually call it, like the bio, the presser bio or whatever that goes along with all the blast emails. And was a thing where, you know, it talked about, you know, obviously you guys putting out a record back in 2020, and then everything happened that happened to everybody. It's one of the first shared universal experiences I can think of that we've all gone through like that. But, you know, it talked about the struggles that you all as a band went through and almost deciding to maybe pack it up and call it a day after, you know, 15 some odd years. And, you know, I've been struggling. I'll say it that way. I've been struggling with taking on a new job myself, where this has been, the podcast has been kind of very much, I don't know if I have the time for it. And I don't want to do something that I'm not passionate about 100% anymore. And so there's been times recently where I've been like, maybe what I'm doing, like this goes on the back burner, or at least it needs to change what it is, because it feels like work. I'm not getting the enjoyment out of it because it just feels like stress when I think about it. And when I read your bio thing today for the new album that's coming out next week, as of when we're talking, it's a thing where I really identified with it. And when I kept listening to the record, I just feel like there's this renewed sense of purpose individually and through all of you. And I feel like it comes through in the record where it's like, no, this still means something to us. We still have a voice and we still have something we want to say, and fuck it, we're going to say it in spite of everything else. And I don't know, to me, I feel like that really resonates with me. Especially like I said, what I've been going through the last, you know, month or two personally. So I guess I kind of wanted to talk about that and just kind of what that process was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks. You know, I appreciate that you take away from it what it is. Basically, it is a renewed sense of purpose, musically at least. And I actually really enjoyed the start of COVID, despite having my whole livelihood took away from me. Because again, it wasn't just myself. not at one point was there any woe is me from my part. I was like, thank fuck I do not have to go on tour, genuinely, because I hated it. Like the dynamic within our band was completely flawed, and I had no interest in carrying on, but I did because it's my job, you know, like, and you have to make certain things work. You have to, you know, work through challenging times, and a lot of them come from relationships with people, like whether they be your immediate network of people or things outside. I mean, the music industry is completely, it's not what it used to be, you know. You have to love it if you want to be a part of it, and if you don't, it's going to be really difficult. And that was the case. We are in a apparent that we weren't all on the same page, so it was time to, you know, make some changes. And yeah, I really enjoyed being able to step away from it and figure out at the time as a 27-year-old dude, like, where I am, because I've been in bands my whole adult life. I've been in bands my whole teenage life. You know, I joined my first band with my friends playing covers when we were 12 years old. And then by the age of 13, completely consumed by, and yeah, that's been my whole life. So it was a little alienating, but then once we realized that Bury Tomorrow isn't just one idea or one person or one person's vision, we were like, actually, like, we do have something worth pursuing here, or at least we have something to just to restart almost. That's pretty much what our song Begin Again kind of, you know, encompasses. But yeah, man, what a time. But I did actually appreciate how much it put people into a position where you could, for example, like, I got to know people who live streets away from me, but we're worlds apart. You know, I'm in a touring band. These guys work in, you know, warehouses or factories or local businesses or supermarkets, whatever. I really got to, like, connect with people in my local area and become a part of my community for the first time, because I'm away so much otherwise. And I really enjoyed that it put everybody on an even keel, and yeah, I take away some beautiful memories from it, even though it was like the most stressful period of my life. But yeah, man, I'm really grateful that, you know, throughout all that, I have the opportunity to sit here and talk with yourself today about the new record, and just how positive that is for the six of us. Not only the six of us, but our whole external team. You know, Dave, our sound guy, Chris, our guitar tech, Ant, our merch guy, and Vicky, our lighting engineer. We've got a great crew. We've got a great team of people, and I'm so glad that we all get together again under the umbrella that is Bury Tomorrow, and yeah, just be a part of each other's lives again in a fun, creative way.
You know, as you were kind of explaining how being a musician, being in a band, has been so much of what you know. I mean, since going back to when you were 12, I think the pandemic really, hopefully, allowed us all to kind of reflect and to kind of figure out things about ourselves that maybe we'd always put on the back burner. And something I find interesting as I get older and talking to other people, because in these conversations, I always end up walking away with something that I just think about, a concept or a thing that was said, and it kind of just stays with me. And that's why I love doing this, because you can learn something from everybody if you take the time to actually listen and then have a conversation. When you're talking about being in a band for so long, and then everything just kind of goes on hold, and then even your other profession, which is, you know, being a barber, obviously that gets taken away as well. And I don't know how long you've been doing that profession, but I would assume not nearly as long as being in a band or a musician. So it becomes this thing where your livelihoods in both senses are taken away, and you're just kind of left with you for maybe the first time ever. What did you learn about yourself when your quote unquote identities had been taken away, when you're not now known as Kris from Bury Tomorrow, or Kris, you know, my barber or whatever, and you're just Kris? What did you find out about yourself?
I did. I just maybe 5 months prior to the first lockdown, I decided to stop drinking. Not that I had a drinking problem. I just completely lost all interest in, like, drinking alcohol, man. It made me feel like shit. So I just stopped. But that was a huge part of my social life. But obviously that brings a bit of it provides a bit of a debrief in your daily life. But I didn't even have that, so I was just like, right, what is it that makes me tick? I realised I could stand up for myself a bit more in regards to what makes me happy, what I want to do, what I don't, how I'm spoken to, how I'm treated, especially in a professional stance, which is why I ended up having so many fallouts. But yeah, it just made me learn that, and I knew this about myself anyway. I've always had an eye at home. I've always had that sort of memento mori vibe when it comes to music. It's going to end one day. Of course it is. And I always wondered, when are these new young bands going to step up, especially in the UK, and going to start taking over? And they are, you know. There's bands like Sleep Token, Static Dress, Malevolence, Loathe. So many great bands, Holding Absence, doing these things now. I'm like, there they are. There's the fucking talent. Like, and one day, our line of bands or whatever it is, whether that's Bring Me, Architects, Us, Sleeps, Bleed From Within, any of them, we've all got our time when it's going to end. You know, it's just the nature of things. So for me, it just felt like that. And I was like, right, who am I aside from that? Well, you know, I love MMA, and the fact that the UFC continued to host fights just brought me a lot of joy. I'm a husband. At the time, we had a wedding move. So sorry about that, mate. Like, yeah, someone always keeps trying to ring me. So yeah, basically, I can't even get my words out now. Or
talking about MMA, getting excited.
Yeah,
about
dude. I just figured out that, like, it doesn't. I'm not defined by what it is I do. I guess ultimately, I'm still a person that's, you know, I'm very easily pleased, man. I love going out for big old walks. I love running. I just did a lot of that, and just realized that I can still do things for enjoyment as opposed to having a career in it. You know, like, I don't have to be on stage to enjoy music, which. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's tricky for me to pinpoint, but I don't know if I learned anything new about myself other than, like I say, about how I see myself and how I am treated and how I can stand up for myself in a way. But yeah, I just became quite content in living a life without any responsibility professionally, or at least from a way that people see me as that guy in that band, because they do at home, you know, oh, it's him from that band or whatever. I live in a small town, that's why. But yeah, it was just nice to be free of any burden of any, I have to be doing this. No, I don't have to do anything. I can just, you know, earn a wage doing a bit of a different job, and yeah, just get on with it. Enjoy time with my wife, and, you know, be a son, be a friend. It was cool. I really enjoyed it.
I think the thing for me, you know, kind of speaking a little more personally, was almost kind of the same. I wouldn't say I didn't know who I did not know who I was. I've kind of been very staunchly who I am. But I think what I started figuring out for myself was more of things that don't make me happy anymore. I just need to cut them out, because, like, why am I placating people, like, you know, relationships that aren't fulfilling in any way, shape, or form? Like, why am I holding on to them? And it just became this thing where, between kind of all that internal, like, the time to just be at home, like, there was about where I had started a new job working at a company that was making one of the vaccines where my wife works still. And because she ended up getting it, then I had to, like, basically I got a month off for, like, paid, because, like, I had to quarantine for the 15 or 20 days for her or something like that. And then I had to take another, like, 10 for me, and then not have a negative COVID test, which, because I had already tested positive, they were like, we're just going to stay home for a month, basically. And so I painted, like, my whole house. I just was kind of in my own world for, like, a month. And there were just a lot of things that I thought about, in addition to having lived in this house for, like, 13 years with friends who have now passed away over the years and stuff like that. And just kind of thinking about things that didn't matter, or things that I held, you know, in such high regard, that I was like, why? Like, it doesn't add any value to my life. And it was kind of a big turning point of just, like, if it doesn't bring value, or it takes me away from something that I do care about, then I'm just going to kind of let it go.
Yeah.
And I feel like anybody who I feel like didn't kind of take the time to reset and kind of really internalize, like, where they were at in their life and what they wanted, and kind of use it as a motivating point to move forward and be better, I kind of feel like maybe it was a wasted opportunity, and I
Oh,
feel kind of sad for
100%.
people.
100%. And you know, I know people like that.
Same.
It's fucking bizarre. The fact that we put far too much importance on things that really do not matter, as you said. And if it doesn't bring value or purpose, not everything has to be about like planting trees and like being super meaningful, but
Right.
it does help. And if you can live your life with meaning, and at least an authentic approach to certain things, then you're only going to be met with peace at the end of it. And that's, you know, the most important thing, like peace. It really is, because it's like when you strip everything else back, if you can give yourself that, then the noise gets quieter. Like nothing else really matters. And I said this in a podcast maybe a couple of years ago, but it's true. I feel like the more authentic your approach is to whichever area of your life, the more peace it'll bring. And the more peaceful you are, the more authentic you'll become. So it's kind of like this cycle where you're just constantly feeding the good stuff. I enjoy reading a lot of like Ryan Holiday or a lot of Stoic philosophy, and a lot of it touches upon that sort of thing. And it's just about taking stock. You know, it's just, I don't want to be in my 30s and live like I did in my 20s. I feel so much better at 30 than I did at 20. And obviously we all have a time in the sun. We all do stupid shit, and we all have friendships and relationships that don't bring us any positives. But I don't want that in my 30s. I'm so glad that I'm rid of a lot of the negativity in my life. There's some inevitabilities, but there's nothing the things that I can control, I do, you know, so the rest of it is kind of just whatever. But yeah. And I try to take that approach musically too. So.
Well, I think it like can't help but like inform you in a more positive way of just like doing something that, and this right here is something I've learned from talking to a lot of foreign people on the podcast, is when you can't quite articulate the thought you have, just stop instead of stammering on.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like it's more doing something with purpose. So like kind of going back to like you guys writing and kind of deciding not to call it a day as a band, and even me doing this, where there are things I would do before. I'm like, oh, I need to stack content and I need to like do all these things. At the end of the day, I just kind of was like, why? What's the point? Like, you know, creating little clips that I think are interesting, or starting a TikTok, which I still don't understand. And ultimately, everyone keeps telling me like, you need to do X, Y, and Z because of ABC. And I would think about it and I go, I mean, yeah, I could. And I've spent a lot of time away from other things where I'm just sitting in front of this computer, like making stuff, and I'll post it everywhere. And then I see it gets like little to no engagement. Or if it does, it doesn't correlate to anyone actually listening to this, which is the whole point. So if the point of everything is that I want someone to listen to this, then why am I forcing people to look at things that they don't give a shit about and aren't reacting to? Because at that point, I'm not getting a return of investment on my time. So I'd rather just put it out, and those that will find it, and they'll find the enjoyment out of it they do. And that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Like I correlated it to, at one point, to like being in a band where I was like, you know, I would love to get to this level. We'll say like, I'd love to get to the where I'm playing arenas level and I'm a headliner. But then I stepped back for a minute and I was like, I'm basically at a pretty decent club level where I'm probably playing 2,000, 4,000 cap rooms, for lack of a better term. And like, I can sustain a pretty good career off of that. And secondly, when I was starting off, this is where I wanted to be. So instead of consistently going, I want to be here and I'm not there. And it's good to be goal oriented. But I think too many of us, when we do things like that, we look at it as a negative instead of being able to step back and go, well, fuck, look at what all I've done. Look at where I am. Look at what I've accomplished. And we never take that moment to do that. We just either, I want this thing and I'm not getting it, so I'm upset. And now I'm like angry and whatever. And it's interesting when you're able to kind of step back for a second and just kind of look at everything through a different prism, that you're just like, oh, I should be thankful and happy with where I am because of all the work I put into this, instead of being resentful of this thing.
Oh yeah, 100%. We were like that for a while. Like, I guess it's always been steady growth with our band. So it was sometimes, especially when you're younger and you're a bit more like emotionally immature, you just think, oh, why is that happening to them? Why is that happening to them? But that's the same for everyone nowadays. That's why, back to our initial like starting point, that's what I hate about Instagram. Like, I'm a pretty confident dude. Like, I know what I'm about. I know what makes me tick. I know what doesn't anymore. So I've changed a lot about who I spend my time with, how I spend my time, and why. But even I sometimes look at stuff that's going on people's feeds and I'm like, fucking hell, I wish I had a bit of that. But really, when it comes down to my goals with the band, and it's the same for all 6 of us, that exceeds any initial expectation we had. My ultimate pipe dream was to play like Reading and Leeds Festival or Download Festival. Within 6 months of being in this band, I'd done that on main stages, and then I've done it like 5 other times. And I actually had this conversation with a friend this morning. Shout out Liam Gilroy. We were just talking about the importance of goal setting and where you are in your life and stopping to smell the roses, I guess, at points. But yeah, life's good, man. Like, regardless of anything, we're breathing, we exist. That's great. That is fucking awesome. So, and I know it sounds a bit cliche, but no, man, like, there is so much to be thankful for or positive about. So yeah, it's, but social media doesn't lend itself too well to that thought process. But yeah, I mean, I'm super grateful for wherever I am in life now as a 30-year-old man. And, I can't wait to see where this new album takes us because, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity awaiting for us. So yeah, I'm really excited to get cracked on with it, really.
I feel like this is as good of any spot to really kind of bring this up. Another thing I was kind of thinking about, leading up to this chat today was, you're going out on tour here in the States and you're going out with actually friends of mine that live and are from here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Hollow Front.
Sweet.
I kind of was fixating on the idea that it's been 13 years since you've toured the States.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, because I think I try to put myself in other people's shoes a lot, and I try to think of things from completely different perspectives than my own and what I've learned, just because maybe it'll offer me something that I can take and put into my own life. And I wouldn't say I'm a very political person in any way, shape, or form. But I think in the last couple of years over our last presidency, it's kind of hard not to be more have an opinion on things. But it did make me wonder, when you come back to, we'll say at least the US, because it's the only thing I know that it's been that long since you've been here. Do you notice, and I guess I'm preemptively asking because you're not back here yet, but when you take time away from touring a country or certain cities and so forth, are you able to see the change in, I would say, just the climate of people when you're gone that long and then come back? Like, to see the change that time has put on them in the cities and the countries and so forth. Are you able to see that and feel it?
I feel like, at least in regards to touring Europe, I always thought, I mean, post-pandemic, because that was the longest we've had away from mainland Europe in a long time as well. No, it's not like 10 years, 13 years, whatever, but it's been like almost 9 years since we've been to Australia too. So I'm looking forward to going back out there and seeing what's happening. But it's hard to say because we never did. I mean, it predates my time in the band, but like that, there was never like a headline tour opportunity. And with the tickets selling how they are, I mean, that's surpassed any expectation we had. So it's always interesting to see how a place doesn't necessarily change, but I guess in regards to shows, I mean, at least I felt in Europe people were going 10 times more mental. People were just like loose, and that was great. So I guess to answer your question, I'm not too sure. I think I'm not preempting anything. I'm expecting more warmth and more. It's not like, who the fuck are these guys, because it's a headline tour. I think that's the difference. Maybe if it was a support tour, I'd be a lot more apprehensive. But I know that the tickets that we're selling are there for us. So I think that we're going to actually have a much better time than maybe we would if we were opening a support tour and like fuck all money and like sleeping in random spots, So there is a level of comfort attached to it that doesn't necessarily scare me. So but I won't lie, mate. I am so excited to drink Mountain Dew Voltage every day. I cannot wait.
I think that's been one of the things for me, as my wife and I like to travel. And so, I mean, we're leaving and gearing up into the next like 2 weeks to go on a 10-day like out west trip where we're going to Vegas for like 2 days, linking up, seeing the Word Alive guys and the Pop Evil guys, like our first like hours after we arrive in Vegas. And then the next day we're seeing Katy Perry, which should be interesting.
That sounds great. You've turned into a little robot, by the way. Like the voice has got a little, I don't know if you...
I haven't touched anything. Is it still doing it?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I guess so it's still doing it.
Yeah.
All right. This is fun.
I don't know if it's me or it probably is.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll have to figure that out after the fact. But yeah, I was going to say it's a thing where traveling around and seeing other cities, seeing other people, seeing different cultures, even just here in the US, it's been really eye-opening. You can hear about and read about things that have happened, and I just think it's one of those that once you really take it in personally, I just don't understand how it couldn't change you or affect you for the positive and expand what you know, like just beyond your own little city or your own friends. So to me, it just becomes this thing where I feel like touring is such a luxury for so many people, and I'm like jealous of all of the experiences you get to have of taking in different cultures, taking in different cities, seeing the world around you.
Yeah.
And
sometimes.
It becomes this. Well, yeah, I also know that the reality of it, as I just was like having spent like the last day and a half with a friend that's on tour right now, where it's like, yeah, it's a hotel room, it's the venue, it's the bus, and unless you or a friend I know in the area comes and takes me somewhere, I'm kind of stuck to those three things, and that's rinse, wash, repeat, and that's the same thing over and over and over again. So I do know that it can be a bit redundant as far as that, and it's not all like, oh, I went to here and I saw the Grand Canyon and I did all these things. It's like maybe if you had a day off in those areas, but I still think that the general crux of it is that you're able to kind of take in so much from so many places, and I feel like that can't help but inform you and make you just a smarter, better person, honestly.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I wouldn't. I had this conversation with a friend the other day as well. I wouldn't necessarily say it's smarter, but and again, it's not the tricky thing with our world. I find if you think you're the dog's bollocks, or if you think you're fucking great, and then you have thousands of people a night or hundreds of people, whatever, telling you how good you are going to think that your shit smells amazing, and you will be consumed by ego and self-importance, and that is a very unhealthy trait to have as a human being. I find that through doing this, you can become a more compassionate person because you're seeing and hearing stories, especially with what's happening in Ukraine right now. We met so many refugees in Poland who'd come over for the show and just telling us how much our music helps with them in that scenario. And again, some people are like, oh yeah, well, I'm like fucking I'm a Power Ranger, I'm saving lives. You know, it's like, nah, mate, you're just writing songs. Like, you're doing something that means something to you that people can take strength from. That's awesome. I think all the power is with the person. You know, I'm not doing anything. It's someone else who's doing all the work. If I can provide a soundtrack to a degree or a musical landscape that can soundtrack someone's time in the life, that's cool. But what people need to realize is it's nothing to do with us and it's all to do with them. The strength is subjective, and people can do great things without a band. But I guess that's beside the point. I think touring, it's inevitable that you will change as a person, you will grow as a person, because as you rightly said, you're experiencing different cultures, and especially from myself, from the age of like 18 years old. I mean, I've been in this band for over 10 years, but I've been touring since I was 17, but you know, you leave school at 16 and yada yada. But I've always been a part of this metal community, and it's always broadened my horizons, I think, because you're often like, we had this thing at school where it's like chavs and moshers, and we were the moshers, and then chavs are like the jocks, if you will. But there wasn't that much division in that. But it's kind of, at least from my own perspective, I got on with everyone. I've always been like all right with people. But it has the potential to, well, basically what I'm saying is you cast aside, I guess, socially, and then you're forced to reconsider things and see things in a different way. And I think everyone in our scene, to be honest, is pretty, well, the fundamentals are that of compassion and unity, because it is a community and it should be. It should always be that first. But some people see it as an opportunity to elevate their ego, and that's not good for anyone. But yeah, I think that there are so many positives, and I'm left with some amazing memories. I might not have bought a house through playing metal. I might not have this and that. I might not be able to have a dog because I'm on tour so much. But you know, some people do. Some people make it work. But there's not one thing that I think, oh, my life could be better, because I'm left with these amazing memories and I've met some amazing people, and that stuff lasts a lifetime. So yeah, I'm very rich in that, and I'm very grateful for it. So that's what I could at least, you know, relate to my own experience of touring.
I just kind of had a thought thinking, you know, as you're talking about getting along with different people and always kind of being like, not like I only hang out with this type of people or these groupings of people or whatever.
Yeah.
And kind of thinking about you being a musician, as you were saying, like I just kind of provide the soundtrack for things to kind of unlock out of what's already existing in somebody. But then I kind of took it a step further mentally for a second and was thinking about how even doing, you know, being a barber, you're kind of doing something similar where you're providing another facet to somebody, where you're providing your skill to make someone feel better about themselves. Are you a rather empathic type of person?
Yeah, to my detriment at times.
Okay.
I see a dog chained up outside a shop when the owner's probably buying the dog food, and I'm like, oh my God, that dog is left on its own outside the shop, and it fucking kills me. I am very empathetic. Sometimes I think I'm more pathetic than empathetic, but no, I am. Yeah, I've always been a pretty emotional dude. I wear me out on my sleeve, and yeah, I struggle hearing some people's stories sometimes, because I it's not that I can relate, but it's not even that I understand, because you can never really understand the struggles of someone else when you're not living in that mortal coil. But yeah, I am empathetic. Yeah.
It just was something I was thinking about, because it's like your two professions essentially are things that make people feel good, feel better about how they look and things like that. And you're providing this thing through a craft in both capacities that you've taken time to learn.
Never thought that.
I just randomly thought about it, and it was just a thing where I don't know, because like I know when I like, so the person that usually was cutting my hair for a while, like, has been doing some other stuff for themselves, and you know, I think I forget where they are right now, but they're like on another trip somewhere, like where they're dancing and stuff like that has taken them. And I went to Atlanta and got my hair cut by a dude, and it was like a proper like barber shop. And it's like one of the best haircuts I've gotten in a very, very long time, to where I was like, shit, really good haircut. I feel really good about myself. And like now I've kind of been on that search for somebody else, and like I've kind of gone to a few different people, and the haircut's fine. It's not hard really to make some, like, to do kind of what I want, because like I'm someone who, when I learn I like something, I learn how to kind of do it, or at least articulate it myself as best as I can. So a lot of times, like with my, like, typically I just get like a fade basically. So it's like, yeah, I like it to be kind of a 0 to a 1, or if you have like a half guard, like we'll do that. I have a colic back here, so we kind of got to work around that. Texture here, like I can walk you through my haircut. I just can't do it myself.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where essentially anyone could cut my hair. But I feel like the few people that, like, when I find my person, it's sort of these intangibles where it's like I feel a connection talking to the person. I feel that maybe they do something where it's the unspoken something that they do where I'm like, this is why I come back to you, because you're providing a service for me, but it makes me feel better than.
And that's the point. So obviously, again, I never thought of it that way, that I provide something that makes people feel, but it's not. I might be providing that, and this is where the lines between like ego and self-importance come in, because it's not, I might be providing that, but it's still not about me. It's about the listener, or it's about the customer. It's not about me. People are very quick to be like, oh yeah, I provide that. I'm the shit. But that's subjective, because you could provide that for someone else, and it happens, mate. You know, like people listen to our band, like, oh, the fucking generic, oh shit, oh, it's boring. And then there's people who are like, oh, that music fucking saved my life, and it soundtracks a really, it either soundtracks a really challenging time that I overcame. It soundtracks a time where I was just drinking with my friends, and you know, like we have these music's like a time capsule, but that's life anyway. You think of these instances that you might have had in a coffee shop, and you meet someone, or you know, you have that interaction in a barbershop, and you think, fuck, that was great. Or that first time you meet a barber, like I'm very lucky that all my clients come back to me. You know, and some don't. Like I've had some clients that have come a few times, but I don't see them again. That's fine. Then I might see them down the lane, like whatever. It's again, it's nothing. It's everything is so subjective, like everything. So whilst yeah, I might be the provider, I'm not the provider of that feeling, because that's all down to the consumer.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's an interesting way to put it. But again, I take no. There's no. I don't know. I just don't see myself as this like fucking. I don't know.
See, I almost would say you're a conduit of sorts.
What do you mean by that?
So I guess like with your music, like you create something that obviously is coming out of you.
Yeah.
Where does it come from? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's something that you're tapping into that needs to come out of you.
Yeah.
And in that, you know, obviously it's been the cliche adage for the longest time. You record something, but then once it gets released, it's no longer yours.
No, it's not.
So it becomes whatever to whomever at that point. And so at that point, you are now the conduit of whatever the world or you tapped into inside yourself, or that the universe put inside you, or that whatever energy as a whole.
Yeah.
You tapped into it, and then you're releasing it. And then it's pulling and gravitating those that want or need something out of it at the time. And I would say, even to a degree, I think doing the same thing can be kind of applied to being a barber. Like I don't, and I'm going to say this, and I know it sounds like ridiculous to say it like this, but I do think that there is something where when you're good at it, that it can make someone, it can change their whole day. It can change. And then to take it a step beyond just your doors, your walls of a barbershop. Someone goes out and now they have a little bit of confidence because they feel good. Then they exude that, and maybe they get a new job. Maybe they get something else. But you were the conduit that day to give them and transfer this energy that they then go out into the rest of the world with. And then however that manifests for them beyond that is whatever happens. But you are kind of the beginning exchange of this energy.
No, that's quite nice. That's a nice way of putting it. But I also think that again is it works both ways. I can sometimes wake up and think, fuck this, and I have a really nice conversation with a client, and it changes my perspective on that day. Or, you know, I order my coffee, and I can have a lovely conversation with someone who works in the shop, and that happens daily, to be honest. I notice it when sometimes I'll be in the supermarket and the lady or guy at the checkout looks defeated by the day, and I'm just like, how's your day been? I don't ask how they are, because how you are can open up I'm not doing too good, I'm not doing this. But if you're just like, how's your day? You know, you'll find one positive from your day at least. There's always one positive in the day. Waking up's the start, but then everything else is just a bit of a, you know, you got to trudge your way through, and there's always something. So if I can be the start of that positivity, then cool. But like, it works both ways. Without people to listen to the music, then it's nothing. Without people to react to it in a live environment, it's nothing. Without someone to say thank you and pay for their haircut, it's nothing. So yeah, I might be the conduit, but also it's a two-way street. At least I think so. I just have a hard time with taking because it's just nothing is to do with me. Everything is to do with an exchange. It's all, yeah, I guess it's mutually beneficial. Like if you have that connection, but yeah, I don't know. The world is a fucking crazy place.
It's funny because, and I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing sort of at something. So like during the pandemic, I ended up going to therapy. Yeah. And it was a thing where once we kind of broke down past my initial why I thought I needed to go, we kind of got into some other things. And in one of the conversations, and it's interesting because a couple of times throughout this conversation, you've kind of hit on things that were like my talking points, my pillars of like breakthrough in therapy. And you know, a little bit ago, you were talking about how essentially, actually, I'll just kind of focus on what you just said because it's what spurned the idea. But, you know, you were talking about how you don't like feel almost imposter syndrome, I would say, because that's what I kind of identified as. Or, you know, my therapist would be like, well, why don't you feel like you're good enough for this job? Why don't you feel like you're good enough for these things? Why do you? And I go, I don't know that I don't feel like I'm good enough. I think there are people who are better, or I think I don't want to put it on myself because I feel like that's very selfish and it's just not my character, I guess. And she was, you know, they were just kind of saying like, well, do you know that you're good at these things? Do you know that you are good at X, Y, and Z? And I was like, well, yeah. And it's like, well, then why don't you exude that as well? Like not be braggy or overconfident, but just take ownership of what you know how to do and that you are good at this thing, that you have skills and value in these things to provide other people. And so hearing you kind of talk about it, even when I'm like, I think you're a conduit to these things, and you're like, well, I mean, no, because it's all these other things. That's sort of how, and a lot of the mentality I've had to kind of work my way out of too, because I feel like the other thing is too, and not saying that you did this, but it's like, I think it's hard sometimes when we hear people compliment us or give us praise that we want to deflect and give it back to where we think it is rightfully distributed versus taking it in ourselves.
Yeah.
The second thing you had kind of talked about in the beginning, you know, understanding that the band life or the shelf life of anything that you do is kind of finite because eventually it has to go away. We as people have to go away. That was something that she had identified in me very quickly. Like when we were talking about different relationships I had with people that we were discussing, and it'd be like, well, it happened to so-and-so. Oh, they're dead. What happened to this person? Oh, they died a long time ago. And it was a thing where she had made the comment that, you know, you are very aware from a young age because of all the death that you've been around. You understand that life is finite. It's not going to last forever. And that you kind of seek out and do things maybe that seem ridiculous or risky to other people, but you understand this is the only life I have. And this is, if I'm going to live it, then I'm going to seek out whatever I can, because why not? It's the only one I have. And
there's a death every day, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think those two things, because I still am working through that. It's interesting to hear somebody else and me being able to kind of identify and pick up on those things that you've said over the last 40 some odd minutes, where I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's why I picked up on the empathic thing, because I very much am empathic. So when listening to you talk, I'm like, oh, it feels like I'm kind of hearing a lot of what I say to people. And then you kind of notice different patterns of your own speech and behavior. And then it's like, oh, all right. So I wondered if like, this is how you feel about things or whatever. So to me, I feel like, it's something that I find interesting, that I feel like we're very, very much similar in that capacity as people.
Yeah. Man, that's nice to hear as well. It's just, there's a death every day, isn't there? You don't realize that, you know, when you're like in your early 20s and you're part of like such a big friend group and you're all like getting wasted every weekend or something, there is a time where that is the last time. There's also that time where you're like, I mean, it doesn't actually exist for me, because as I'm sitting here, I am surrounded by fucking Power Ranger figures. But there's a time where, I mean, I don't sit here fucking playing with them now. You know, if I sit here, I'm playing guitar or, you know, playing on the PlayStation. But there's a time when everything ends. But like with that being said, there's a first time for everything too. So with everything, it's so fucking cliche, but like there's always something that ends. But then there's so much to gain from every day. So it's not, you know, for example, I quit drinking, I quit smoking cigs, I still love ganja, but it's like there's all these other things that I kind of stopped that I feel like weren't necessarily benefiting me as a person or the person that I identified with and wanted to become, whatever. So I started doing other things instead. I started doing Thai boxing, I started doing kickboxing, I started running. You know, I replaced not bad habits, because what's bad for me is good for someone else. You know, that social whatever. I'm more than happy just fucking sat with my wife doing nothing. But yeah, man, there's a death every day and there's a birth every day. And I kind of feel like that happened with the band, to be honest. There was a death of a certain time, much as there was before I was in the band, you know, like there was a phase that ended, one started with me in it. we had a lineup change. The next kind of chapter's begun for us, and who knows? Like, you know, you just never know what's going to happen. But I don't know. I'm grateful for all of it. Do you know what I mean?
I guess it's funny because as you were saying, like you quit drinking. I feel like in the last like year or so is when I've really kind of started getting into smoking pot and doing all that kind of stuff. And it's funny, like my drinking has gone significantly down, and I always wake up feeling way better. Even after drinking, sometimes I'll still come home and just smoke, and then I'm like, I wake up feeling great and rested, and it's awesome. And it just kind of like, I still love beer, I still love spirits, I love like a good cocktail, I love sort of like, again, going to the craft side of those things. When someone's good at doing what they do, I mean, I enjoy it. Yeah. But the flip side of it is like too often the downsides of it, of like when you drink a lot and you're just like, oh, I feel like shit. It's like I don't really miss that. But like even still, like I think for me it's been more interesting to, you know, especially working, I just kind of got out of the bar industry again, but like now I'm back into retail. And so it's like, it's just constant, like having to talk, having to be around noise and just things. So a lot of times when I smoke, it's just kind of like finding a center and just being quiet and just kind of finally shutting down externally, but internally it's kind of like shutting it down to waking up, focusing. Yeah. And waking up. And it's funny because when I grew up, like growing up, I was like hugely into sports. Like I wrestled, I played basketball, I ran track, I played football, I did all those things. And as I get older, like I'm less active per se, but I feel like now, whereas I shun doing any drugs and stuff like that, now I'm more like, all right, like let's take shrooms and microdose and let's kind of go on a trip. Let's try some of these things. And just, I think as Craig from Straight from the Path put it best, it's like being a passenger in your life sometimes and just kind of dealing with things or thinking of things that are beyond yourself. And I think at that point, it kind of awakens more of an empathic person, because I guess that would be why we would do it. Because if you're so self-centered, then why would you ever need to expand beyond what you know? But I think for myself, it's really interesting to just kind of step back and just kind of observe a lot more than to participate.
I feel like that is essentially how I feel within my social life now. I always used to feel like I had to be the person to make everyone laugh or to like act like a dickhead or just do whatever. But it came naturally at the time, you know. I'm not saying I ever tried to be something I'm not. Whereas now I'm just at a different juncture in my life, and I'm more than happy to just participate and be just take a backseat. And then people I think something's wrong, and it's like, nah, like, you know, I try and stay away from my phone. I have friends who try and ring me every day, and I'm just like, it's not good for me to just be constantly like engaged with, you know. Not all that much happens in my life, so I don't know why the fuck people want to speak to me every day. But fuck me, like I'm more than happy just taking a back seat and just chilling, you know.
I think the hard part is, and like I had this, it's double-edged sword, because a friend of mine is over in Europe right now. He's one of the guitar players in Dance Gavin Dance, but he's in I knew him from the band Idola that he's still in, Andrew, and he doesn't have any social media. And it was a thing where that trip I was talking about, where we're going out west, one of the stops we're making is in Salt Lake City in Utah, and that's where he lives. So he's like, man, like, can't wait to see you. Like, I'm not on tour at that point. Like, my wife and I'll come hang out with you and your wife. Like, it'll be a good time. We'll take you out. And so I've been trying to be like, hey, like, these are the days. What day do you want to try to hang out? Like, what works best for you? And like, I just was getting nothing. And then because there was some, and I'm not speaking out of turn because he's talked about it on this show just in general quite a bit, but you know, he's had mental health issues and stuff like that. And so I started getting worried when he just kind of disappeared, and I was like, fuck. So I called him the other day, and it was like, this number is no longer in service. And I was like, oh shit, what the fuck happened? Because like in the day and age now where you could literally get a hold of somebody, when you can't in any way, shape, or form, like not through phone or social media, it's like, well, how do I know that like you're okay,
mate?
And so honestly,
So I told you at the start I didn't have my phone, like, and all that shit was going on. So a dear friend of mine, messaged one of my best friends and was like, "Is Dawson alive?" He basically thought I'd died because he was sending me messages. They were being delivered but not read. And then he went on my wife's Instagram. She doesn't give a fuck about social media either. So she has no posts. And he thought that she deleted all the pictures of us together because she did used to have them, but she got rid of them all. She was like, why do people want to look at my shit? Fuck that. And I respect that. So she was just like, she got rid of everything. And he was convinced that something bad had happened to me. And he was like, no, it's fine. He's just, I had a phone for like 2 weeks. Yeah. Fucking 2 weeks. And I appreciate that he cares about me. But it's mental. It's mental. I hate that. Like, so today I went to a parking space, didn't have my wallet, and you have to pay by downloading an app and then paying for it. Can you imagine if I didn't have my phone? I'd be like, great, I can't even park my fucking car. It's like, I hate that side of things, man. But I mean, it's just, you've got to get with it. Society changes, we have to somewhat conform.
Yeah.
But fuck.
But it was so weird because, like, I felt like I almost did the same thing. Like, I was literally like, all right, I saw that they're touring, but like I hadn't seen any posts with him in it. So then I started getting like worried. I'm like, fuck. And then I was like, well, I know a friend of mine's on tour with another band, TMing, and he'll see him in like a day or two. So I was like, hey, I started literally writing the message. Hey, like, my friend's in this band. This is what he looks like. You guys are playing with them in like a couple of days. If you just see him, can you just let me know that like he's there and he's fine? Like, that's it. And then I didn't hit send, but I was just like, man, what the fuck? I'm crazy. Like, I feel crazy doing this, but like, it just, again, going back to being empathic, I was like, I know that my friend can go through extremes. And so I know the last time I saw him, some things were kind of coming to a head with some other things. And I was like, I don't know, like where he's at right now. Like, literally, figuratively, mentally, everything. I don't know where he's at. So it was just this thing where I was like, I feel fucking crazy that like I'm doing that. But then I was like, or is it a good thing that I care and that I want to make sure and I'm taking the steps where maybe a lot of other people would be like, I'm sure he'll pop up.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I've done that where I'll like where I will be like, oh, I'll talk to them later, or I'll bring up something later. I won't call them now. I won't send them a text. I won't whatever. And then, they pass on. And I'm just like, fuck, now I don't have that opportunity. So I feel like I'm stuck in between where I'm like, do I give people space and just let shit ride out the way it's going to happen? Or do I then not do that and then have the adverse happen where the unfortunate happens? And now I'm kind of left with this regret that I shoulder and carry for a while where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a tricky one. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. You can only kind of be in control of how you feel at the time. If you want to turn your phone off, you've got every right to turn your phone off. 100%. Like, and I feel the same. I've had friends where it's like, this happened to like my best friend in the world. Like recently, I was messaging him every other day, just like stupid memes and stuff, just like, lads do. And I heard nothing from him and I wasn't getting anything back. And I was just like, mate, I was like, cut the shit. I'm not sending you a funny message. I'm not sending you a joke or anything. I'm like, are you all right? And then a couple of days later, like, mate, I've just been so stressed out at work. I needed some space. I've really enjoyed it. I'm like, good. Somebody else would be like, oh, he's got a problem with me. Oh, no. But it's not about us. Again, you've got to take yourself out of the situation. How is someone else feeling? If they need that space, fucking have it. Have it for as long as you need. Have it for years. And I'm guilty of this. This happened to some of my friends years ago where they kind of, distance themselves from me. And I did take it personally. But, man, we live in a world now where everyone just wants so much from you. Everybody expects you to answer that email now, answer that WhatsApp now, send that email now, meet up with me now, speak to me now, fucking now. Amazon Prime, deliver me it now. I ordered it. Where's my order? I placed it 5 minutes ago. Like, fucking everybody needs to just shut the fuck up and chill the fuck out. Do you know what I mean? I'm probably getting a bit like, oh, but yeah. I mean, at the crux of it, just take some time for yourself.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those things like where I've really tried learning instead of just keeping these going, like where I feel like something kind of neatly wraps itself up. I feel like that sentiment of what you said kind of purpose, Jesus Christ.
I feel you.
Perfectly encapsulates what kind of we've talked about as a whole. I mean, it correlates to what you as the band kind of had to do to put out this record, where you kind of needed to disappear, kind of make yourself right, to then come back to it and make the band what it needs to be moving forward. It's growth, it's looking internally, it's dealing with interpersonal relationships and all those kind of things, and then ultimately, taking what you need to do to be a better you, whatever that looks like. And I think you kind of just nailed it on the head, like the whole conversation. I think you just kind of summed up very perfectly. So I'm like, I don't really think there's anything really to add. Like, I would love to keep talking, and I feel like you and I could easily just talk about whatever. But I feel like for the sake of this, I feel like that's a really great place to end.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
Love to do it again.
Yeah, 100%. I was trying to see. I should have pulled up the tour date so I could be like, oh, are you guys coming around me in some capacity?
I think we are playing. Did you say you're in Grand Rapids?
Yep.
I know we're playing Detroit, but I don't know how far that is away from you.
It's like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we're playing Detroit. I know that much. D-Town.
Yeah. Is this because you were saying that you haven't been in the band, you've only been in the band for like 10 years. Have you toured the US?
Never. I've only been to Seattle.
I just came back from Seattle like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful city. That's the only place I've ever been in America. So I'm excited for this because then I get 5 days. I'm staying in New York for like 5 days after the tour. So I'm fucking stoked.
What are you most looking forward to about, I mean, you already said Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew Voltage, Ranch Pringles, Hot Pockets. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to being a part of it. Like, America has always intrigued me, and obviously I've only ever been super north, like northwest. So I don't feel like that's a great representation of America as a whole. But
No.
I mean, I saw an eagle the second we got over the border, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is America!" But dude, I've always been enamored and fascinated with the United States, and I just look forward to connecting with, I guess, our fan base over there and just hearing their stories and seeing what like metal means to you guys as a different country. So I feel like we've seen it worldwide, I guess, with myself being the exception with America. But I'm really looking forward to New York. I won't lie, that's a dream come true to be playing Gramercy Theatre and then to have 5 days to hang out. I'm really looking forward to meeting up with Afterlife and Hollow Front. There's a lot to look forward to, man. I mean, one of my favourite bands, to be honest, are from Detroit, and there's not going to be a show there. I think we're only there for like a day, but
Yep, you are. May 14th, I looked it up.
Yeah.
It's actually usually one of my days off from work, so I might actually make the trek
Oh,
out.
dude, amazing. We'll have to get some coffee or something. I'm looking forward to that. Just good record shops, good coffee spots, just good old walks and see the city, see some skylines, because that's the one thing that I look forward to, just going to the observatories in like New York and stuff, and just being among some really tall buildings that we do not have in this country. So, yeah, just being there. It's just such a big thing to be in America for like a month. It's so like a part of everyone's, the West's culture, like TV and movies and music and everything. So just being immersed in that culture every day is really exciting.
Yeah, I think my wife has a third interview on Friday as when we're recording for a company that's based out of Sweden, but they have they just expanded and have a location here because they are in the pharmaceutical world. And so I guess they have something that they make that the American government wants to be here. And so to make it to where it doesn't cost a shitload to ship it and all that kind of stuff and make the prices of the product very high, they're expanding to here in Michigan. And so she was making a comment that one of the main people in this company was like, part of the process of, if you were to get hired, whoever we're looking at, we want to come out here to Sweden for a little bit and just kind of see how our company is like and learn, because there's the expectation that you have to make this the exact same way we make it. So you need to know how everything works. And so it was a thing where she was like, oh, I'll go to Sweden on a company dime. And then I was like, well, I want to go because like I want to see a different thing that I'm not used to. Like I grew up initially in Delaware, which is literally is the first state in the United States. It was the first state that was colonized. And so to me, it's interesting because if you go back home and back east to the original 13 colonies that started the whole Americas, the history is so rich. There's still all the buildings, and it's weird because the rest of the US that I see, for the most part, it's not like that. Like, they don't honor where we came from. They tear it all down and build new. And that's the one thing that I'm excited about getting out of this country and going to see, because it's one of the things I know to be true is that they still value culture and history. I mean, one of my favorite stories, I think it was the Chinese or the Japanese, one or the other, where when something would be broken, they fix it with gold. So now the imperfection becomes the most valuable part of it. And there's
Quite
something
nice metaphor.
Yeah, and there's something so beautiful about that to me, where, like, in a country where we don't value anything of our past and definitely don't look back and learn from it, clearly, it's a thing where I want to go somewhere else and see people that still appreciate where they came from, and it informs of where they're going.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I feel like wherever we are from, at least from a societal standpoint, nobody's really got your back. These clowns that are like in charge are just so devoid of compassion and the things that really make you human. So it's interesting that as humans we are led, but we're led by these absolute fucking numpties. So it's but that's for another fucking podcast, I'm sure. But yeah, man, it's not that we shouldn't be proud of where we're from, but I think where you're from, I mean, I'm from a very small town, and I've always carried that sort of, people think I'm in like the fucking Beatles or something, and it's like, nah, I'll just go on tour and play my guitar for a bit. But that's because nothing really happens to people around here. So it's not, that has kind of given me that sort of grounding, because people say, oh, it keeps you humble. I'm like, keeps me humble. And I hate the word humble, because I wouldn't say like I'm humble. I'm just fucking normal. The whole of our band is, but yeah, I think, I mean, I love where I'm from. I love this town. Like, I chose to stay here years back, and my wife moved up from London. She's from down that part, and hated living in a city. So it's beautiful. I live in the middle of, there's a church in the distance and loads of rolling hills, and that suits me down to the ground as a 30-year-old man. So I mean, I love where I'm from. I'm proud of my country, but I'm not proud of my government. But I'm sure you're the same. So it's the two are very different, I think. I mean, yeah, America is draped in such rich history. So is the UK, especially like certain cities in Europe. When you go to Budapest or Prague and you see these amazing old buildings that are they tell a story if you're willing to like learn it. But yeah, man, I guess that's just the way of the world, isn't it? We're not defined by the people that lead us, that's for sure. And I feel for Russia at present, because I'm sure a lot of their citizens are just absolutely distraught with what's happening over there. But again, it's just injustices everywhere. You've just got to, pick the flowers when you can.
Absolutely. Well, last question for you. Where can everyone find you, or I guess I should say your band, or anything you'd like to plug online?
Yeah, it's just at Bury Tomorrow. New record, The Seventh Son, comes out May, fucking hell, March the 31st. Why do I always do that? March and May, June, July. Yeah, March the 31st on Sony Music Worldwide. And yeah, we will be in the United States of America from the 2nd of May. Starts in LA at the Echoplex, finishes in New York on the 20th. So yeah, hopefully if we're in your city or we're nearabouts, come through. If not, we're making plans to come back pretty soon, because we're playing Blue Ridge in September. So there might be something around there. But yeah, just in general, thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting the new album, and just, yeah, I'm appreciative to be a part of Brewtallyspeaking today. So thank you, man.
Hey, way to get it right. A lot of people trip over the phrasing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was my conversation with Kris, again, at Bury Tomorrow. Their new record comes out on the 31st, which, as of when you're hearing this, you still got basically until Friday. The record rips, though. If you had any inclinations that it wasn't going to be really good based on the singles at this point, then I don't know what you were expecting. It's funny, as I was listening to the record again today on my walk with my dog, I was thinking about how one of the songs, because a lot of times when I get the record, it's usually with the first single or two has been released. And at that point, I kind of stopped paying attention to which single is out or what video is out because I already have the record, so I don't need to. But it was funny as I was listening to the last half of the record today, one of the songs came on and I was like, oh man, I feel like this would be a really good single. This is just it screams this needs to be a single. And then I thought to myself, usually when I have this feeling, it already is, and I just am unaware of it. And so it was funny to pull up the record on iTunes, the singles that have been released so far, and to see that it was one of the singles. Actually, I think it was the first single, first or second. And it was just interesting to know that sort of, I guess, my radar for what is a single, what would probably get people interested in it, what would sell people on the band if they heard a single, quote unquote, from the album. And so it's good to know that I guess the band and those that are making those decisions and mine are pretty similar. Ultimately, though, today was just, it was a reminder of a lot of, again, like I said in the intro, kind of at length, today was one of those days where it just really reinvigorated the passion of why I do this. And I have a few more chats coming up on my next day off. And I'm excited to talk to them as well, those people, one of which, conveniently enough, is with someone that I believe, by all accounts, as far as I'm to understand it, I did their first bit of press when the band had been signed and their first EP was re-released by a label. And so it'll be interesting to have this person come back on 4 or 5 years later when so much has happened to them. And instead of talking to a person who didn't necessarily know where the journey was going to take them, this new musical journey they were on, I now get to talk to someone that's 4 or 5 years into it, has toured and done a lot of touring, has done a lot of stuff, and has grown as a person. And it's something I'm excited to reconnect with this person and just kind of find out what's been going on. Like, to a degree, I already know because I've had contact with this person over the years. But it'll be interesting to see where this conversation goes, because I can remember who, and when I call a lot of people kid, but it'll be interesting to see, the kid that I talked to now what I would consider to be more of a man. I think, a lot has happened, and obviously I would believe there would be growth. So I'm very excited to talk to this person in a couple of days. And, there's a lot of things that have been happening the last week where it just kind of, it really reaffirmed this life, I guess, that I've chosen for myself and the weird things that I do. I was fortunate enough to see a friend, now that touring's back pretty much in full swing, and they were here in town. And it's funny, one of my new employees saw me standing at merch with my friend. And so when I went to work the next day, someone's like, oh, you were working merch? Like, you left here and then went and worked merch at a show? And I was like, no, I was hanging out with my friend, just hanging out, talking to him, because it's the only time I could hang out with him while he was working. But fast forward to the next day, that they had a day off. The tour had a day off here in town still. And so we went out to dinner, and it was just kind of fun to tell stories with each other through experiences that, like, he's had, and then experiences that I've had doing the podcast, and then even reflecting on how long the two of us have known each other, and taking it all the way back to when we were just email correspondence when I used to book shows, and this person would book shows for me. Actually, it's Frank, who's been on the podcast a bunch, Frank Finelli. But it was one of those things where it was really interesting to just kind of think about the friendship and the things that I have and the places I've gone and seen Frank, and just the crazy stories where it's like, oh yeah, I remember when we went to this place in Indiana, and like Jesse Camp from MTV was there when you were like tour managing the Fuckface Unstoppable tour, and to have him kind of tell his side of some of the other parts of that story that we weren't privy to at the time, and just kind of growing our friendship. And to me, that's what I hope all of this ends up being for. I hope it spurns longtime friendships. And these are like, this conversation I had with Kris is just the beginning of whatever our friendship can be. Obviously with the day and age of the internet, and as you heard us both kind of say, like, oh, we kind of hate social media and so forth. But it is one of those things where I definitely felt after talking to Kris, I messaged him and I was like, this was one of those things that reaffirmed why I love doing this show and why I love talking to people. And, I'm really excited to see you in a couple of months when you're touring here in the States. And I'm going to, do my best to come out and see you and hang out with you. And it's one of those things where maybe it's because of my age and I feel like I'm willing to put more effort into maintaining relationships than I think some others are. But it's the crux of why I'm bringing this up is because the thing I told Kris is I'm a firm believer that as more of my life goes on and these instances happen, I feel like people are kind of put into your life when they're supposed to be there. And that's the best way I can put it. That's honestly how I feel about these things. And it's something where, I was kind of nervous to do these podcasts back to back because I haven't done one really. Like I did that one with Schmeens from Lettuce, but that was like a 20-minute thing. That's easy. There's not really a whole lot you got to get into. It's kind of a very we're meeting for a drink real quick and then we're fucking off. So it's a thing where to kind of get back into it and do a full on chat for an hour and a half, hour and a half. I was a little worried that maybe I was rusty or something and it would not be good. But today, like I said, and have continually said throughout the day and thinking about it, today was a good day and really reaffirmed why I love doing this. Even doing the podcast episode with Dan over on DFT's Dungeon of talking about Cave-In. I mean, it's all kind of cyclical, thinking about my life back in high school, my senior year, talking about the Cave-In record Antenna versus now being almost 40 when I listen to that record. I think it's good to take stock in where you are in your life and growth of you as a person and hopefully those around you that you choose to surround yourself with. I think if you surround yourself with good people, good things will happen. So to start wrapping up this episode, if you would like to keep up with Kris, you can find him basically at Instagram, Kris Dawson. There is a Twitter, but it doesn't look like it's been active for about 2 years, probably since the pandemic, I think is what I saw roughly. If you would like to keep up with Barry Tomorrow, you can find him on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Barry Tomorrow, or find all the news and going-ons with them over at barry-tomorrow.com. And again, the new album, The Seventh Son, comes out this coming Friday, so you don't have to wait much longer to hear it. But I promise you it's been well worth the wait, and very much looking forward, like I said, to catching the guys, and actually, honestly, seeing Hollowfront. I haven't caught those guys live in a couple of years. They haven't really played here at home very often, now that they're touring a lot more, so it'll be kind of a good excuse to kind of get out and go kind of see old friends and some new ones and just kind of be immersed in the camaraderie of the scene of metal music and hardcore and all that kind of stuff. And looking forward to it. I'm kind of getting back into falling in love with music again and going to shows and being a fan. And I know it sounds stupid to say that, but it's really something that I struggled with for a while. And I think I'm kind of on the other side of it. And I'm very excited to be excited about music again because it's a lot of who I am. If you would like to keep up with the podcast, it's simple enough. You can find us Brewspeak Pod everywhere. And I want to thank our sponsors. Again, kind of cyclically, getting to hang out with Frankie from Rockabilia on our Seattle trip to go see the Botch reunion. And I actually just ran into Andy, the owner of Starving Artist Brewery. He was at my mall the other day and popped in, and I think there's plans for us to kind of hang out here soon at some shows that are coming up. But it's been great working with people who I think are great people and make good products and are ultimately good people. Again, kind of going back to what I just said, surround yourself with good people who inspire you, and usually good things will come out of those inspirations. And lastly, for the Brewtallyspeaking podcast, I am John, and I'll talk to you all next week, where, as I already said, I have Jake, drummer from Gideon, on. That was a really good chat, too. We kind of get right into it and cover a lot of ground over the almost 2 hours we were talking. So very much excited for you guys to hear that one, and I'll talk to you all next time. Enjoy the rest of your week.